first time in nearly 50 years, NASA is sending astronauts back to the moon.
The Artemis II mission set for liftoff from Florida as early as Wednesday of this coming week. Joining us now is Ed Ludlow, co-host of Bloomberg Tech. He's going to be there in Florida for this launch, regardless of whether or not it transpires, I should say. Ed, help us understand the magnitude of this, what this means kind of in the history of space exploration.
Yeah, this is the great next step in America's ambition to have humans back on the moon. In this mission, Artemis II, they're basically doing a flyby or a fly around the moon. So they travel deep into space, 285,000 miles, go around the moon and come back. But it's the great dress rehearsal for the technology essentially that's planned to get humankind and driven by NASA, America, back to the moon maybe 2028. And it is the Space Launch System, principally built by Boeing, and then the Orion spacecraft, principally built by Lockheed. And it's a project that is way behind schedule, frankly, and massively over budget. But a big moment if we go off this week.
We know there are 4 astronauts. I do know one of them is named Christina. I also know that none of the 3 of us were invited to go on this mission, which we're a little salty about. But what do we know about these individuals and how they got selected?
Yeah, so there's essentially 3 U.S. citizens and 1 Canadian. It's a great international collaboration. Beyond the crew themselves, the European Space Agency has a hand in some of the technology of the full stack as well. But they are people with vast experience. Reed Wiseman is the commander of the mission. He's classic former Navy test pilot. Has previously been to ISS. Victor Glover will be the first Black astronaut to travel to lunar distance. So it's kind of a significant moment in history from that standpoint. But he's been, on prior SpaceX-driven missions, SpaceX Crew 1. Christina, who you mentioned, is the mission specialist, electrical engineer. She actually holds the record for longest continuous space flight by a woman. And then the Canadian is Jeremy Hansen, first Canadian assigned to a lunar mission. So a lot of firsts, but highly decorated and experienced crew.
Mission specialist. I feel like I could adopt that title for myself here at Bloomberg.
Dare to dream.
Mission
Christina.
specialist.
Yeah.
Go ahead, David.
Ed, we're looking at live pictures now. Our viewers on TV and at Bloomberg.com and on the app can see those pictures there in Florida. What can you expect as you make your way there? And as I said, there's some uncertainty, of course, whether or not this is going to happen. You mentioned the delays that this program has faced over many, many years now.
Yeah.
Walk us through what's going to transpire here over the course of the week leading up to that final countdown.
Yeah, I mean, NASA, is communicating very regularly, and whether you take that as an indication of confidence, it's hard to tell. Space launch, when it involves human life, is complex. There are systems issues. They will run tests. They are not doing a full dress rehearsal, which they had done in the month of March, early March, late February. They will track the weather very closely, but it all gears toward the earliest opportunity to launch, which is 6:24 p.m. Eastern time on Wednesday, April 1st. And, the system is a mix of highly synchronized autonomous technology, human judgment call. And again, the weather is a big factor, on the range of KSC. So that will constantly be launched, but the crew are there. They arrived, I believe, Friday afternoon, having been in quarantine and mandatory quarantine. And it is all tracking to that early launch window. But there are backup windows over consecutive days through Monday night.
You said this mission is essentially kind of doing a lunar flyby. Is it the next mission that the hope is they will actually get boots on the moon? And why do this? Is it just because, as that legendary West Wing episode says, this is what's next in human progress?
Yeah, I mean, there's the politics of it, frankly. The Trump administration had put the moon front and center of its own belief of what NASA should be doing. The Artemis program has its origins back in the Bush era, George W. But, Obama didn't really go for the moon as a priority. And then Trump presidency 1 carried through Biden and Trump 2. Artemis 1, which was testing the Orion spacecraft and space launch system, was supposed to go in 2017. It went in 22, and that's had a cascading effect. But the goal on paper is to get human boots, American boots, on the moon's surface in 2028, with the geopolitics of knowing China has the same ambition and they're saying 2030. So I wouldn't underestimate that part of the story. The political will to do this, which was a big part of Jared Isaacman's path to becoming administrator. Maybe we can talk about that on another edition of Bloomberg This Weekend.
I would love that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's seriously important to this administration.
Very quickly, got about a minute left. I'm curious, you mentioned that this is a Boeing and Lockheed joint project. These are kind of old standby government contractors. How has the advent of SpaceX and Blue Origin and the rest sort of changed the shape of this program, this particular mission in any way?
NASA is committed to those two as principal contractors through Artemis 5. But as Lauren Grush and I broke the story on 10 days ago, and the administrator confirmed on Tuesday morning, they have 2 new proposals from SpaceX and from Blue Origin to take over the actual role of getting Orion from low Earth orbit to the moon. So right now, Space Launch System takes to orbit and carries it or propels it to the moon. There is you can read about it on Bloomberg.com, but there is now a proposal where actually those 2 newer names will probably step in and do what those others have struggled to do.